Welcome to Current Affairs on JTV. Today I'm joined by Elliot Abrams, a fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and former Deputy National Security Advisor of the United States of America. Elliot, you've been a leading Middle East analyst for many years, have met all the leading players in the region and understand its shifting dynamics. What are the trends that you can see dominating the region for the next few years?
I suppose the first is the rise of Iran, which has been happening, one would have to say, throughout the Obama period, and perhaps since the fall of Saddam Hussein, but that's certainly a huge trend, partly because of the rise of Iran, and a second trend, the rise of the Islamic State and jihadism more generally. There's a third trend, which is a kind of Israeli-Arab state cooperation. The days when, the fear was of conventional war are long over, and you now have many more, mostly secret, contacts between Israel and countries like the Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia even. And obviously security relations between Israel and its neighbors, Jordan and Israel, are probably better than they have ever been.
Let's take each of these in turn, starting with the first you mentioned. How worried should we be about Iran? The nuclear deal agreed last year has convinced some people Iranian aggression is off the table. Is it?
Oh, no. I think we should be very worried about Iran, whose conduct was going to be, I think, inevitably made worse by the nuclear deal. Because the deal they've done with Obama has two problems. The first is the terms of the deal itself, which I think free Iran up, perhaps slow it down a few years, but free it up to build a massive nuclear program and ultimately nuclear weapons. But meanwhile, we can see that the Obama administration is desperate to maintain this deal and therefore will do nothing about any other form of Iranian misconduct. So Iran goes ahead and does 2 ballistic missile tests in, I guess, late 2015 in violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Iran sends, again in 2015, thousands more of its own IRGC troops and Shia militias into Iraq and Syria. Iran sacks, in the very beginning of 2016, the Saudi embassy in Tehran and Saudi consulate, which I think, let's not be children here, which are obviously actions approved and motivated by the state, not by angry crowds. So Iran is behaving worse. Iran has, since the nuclear deal, arrested and jailed more Americans. And again, no reaction from the Obama White House. So we are seeing an Iran that feels more aggressive. And remember that they have not yet received that $150 billion that they should be getting sometime in mid-2016.
You put that very cogently, but why does the Obama administration not see things the same way? Is it out of naivety, a genuine belief that it can change Iranian behavior, or something more malevolent?
Well, I think first, the president's great legacy, in his own view, in the Middle East is not going to be Israeli-Palestinian peace, quite obviously. It's the Iran deal. That's the one thing. So they'll do anything to save that. And we know even from the Cold War, from arms negotiations with the Soviets, if you spend a long time negotiating an arms control deal, you don't want to hear about the fact that you were suckered into it. You don't want to hear about violations of it. And the administration doesn't want to hear anything about Iranian misconduct. All they want to do is to say, this is a great, wonderful deal. It's an enormous achievement. And any deviation from that line is not going to be tolerated within the administration. I think there are probably people, particularly in the Defense Department, who are aware of the dangers, but you're not going to hear about that from the White House. I think they've persuaded themselves and they will continue in 2016 to persuade themselves in Obama's last year that this is a great achievement and nothing may be permitted to disturb it.
Moving on to the second issue you've mentioned, Islamic State. What is behind the resurgence, or maybe that should be the enduring appeal, of radical Islam? Is it a response to the regimes it has replaced, the spread of social media making this easier, or something entirely different?
Well, as you say, it's been around for a long time, and at one level we're dealing with a very deep problem, which is this extremist strain of Islam. But I think the timing now, meaning let's say 2010 to now, has a lot to do with what's going on in Iraq and Syria. After a moment of stability in around 2008-9, the Maliki regime in Iraq became, in the eyes of Iraqi Sunnis, a sectarian Shia regime. And it was possible for the Islamic State to rise as a defender of Sunnis in Iraq. And simultaneously, you had, starting in 2011 and 2012, the butchery of Sunnis in Syria by the Assad regime. And the Western reaction to it was basically nothing. It's worth remembering that General Petraeus at the Central Intelligence Agency, Leon Panetta, the Secretary of Defense of the U.S., and Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, in 2012, told Obama, we need to start supporting these Sunni rebel groups in Syria. And he said no, he wouldn't do it. So there was no organized resistance, really, of moderate groups to the Assad regime's vast slaughter of Sunnis in that country. And so who was able to grab this narrative and say, we will defend Sunnis. We are the defense of Sunnis. It was the Islamic State. So you have a moment when they are able to pose as a defender of Sunnis in both Iraq and Syria at the same time. I think that has a lot to do with the rise in jihadi activity in both of those countries and their ability to recruit Sunnis from around the world.
Let's come to the final trend you mentioned, and I'll juxtapose it with another one. You mentioned Arab states were reorienting their relationships with Israel, but at the same time, the Israeli-Palestinian peace process has gone nowhere for several years now. What are we to make of these two factors running alongside each other?
Well, I think there is a relationship. First, from the Israeli point of view, and even, I would argue, from the Jordanian and Egyptian point of view, the region is a complete mess. Jihadi activity, rise of Iran, and the notion that it must be addressed by the withdrawal of particularly the Israeli Defense Force from the West Bank seems nuts. I mean, I think it seems nuts to the Jordanians, Egyptians, and Israelis, because if the Israelis were to withdraw right now, it's reasonable to think that Hamas or even jihadis coming down from Syria would take over the West Bank. So to most Israelis, it just seems that whatever should have been done 5 or 10 or 20 years ago, now, 2015, 2016, it's absurd to think that this is the moment for further Israeli withdrawals. I think I would add to that on the peace process question, the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, turns 81 in early 2016, as I recall it. And he's talked about retirement, and the succession fight is beginning. What that means is that no Palestinian politician is going to want to make or endorse big concessions to Israel as part of some kind of negotiation with Israel. So from the point of view of internal politics among the Palestinians, this is, again, not the moment to try to move forward on the peace negotiations. And I think, frankly, the Obama administration has finally understood. You won't see Kerry or others shuttling back and forth to Ramallah and Jerusalem because they recognize that's really off the table for the last year of the Obama administration.